What's going on, Ohio Cannabis Report family? Gerald Moore Jr. checking in. It's been a minute since we did an update, but we're going to do some news articles. Obviously, things have been a little bit slow in Ohio as the legislators are on break right now. There have been we've had House Bill 160 is the latest thing that has been introduced to the House, which would drastically change the current cannabis laws in Ohio. Obviously, adult use is still something fairly new to Ohio. We've had medical use for a few years now. So, again, the industry is still in its infancy stage. A lot of Ohioans don't even know that we have an industry because there's no marketing or advertising for the legal businesses. Obviously, you still have legacy market. You still have a lot of people on the legacy market doing their own events that aren't backed by the state level business owners aren't doing a lot of events because they're afraid that their license might be put into jeopardy. So there's a lot going on in Ohio. You have people that are supporting the legacy market. You have people that are supporting the legal market. Obviously, people are supporting the legal market, thinking that the state is. I mean, the laws were passed that issue 2 is supposed to provide up to 36% of tax revenues were going to go to communities disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. And so communities that have dispensaries, they were supposed to receive an allotment of money. The state has rescinded that, and they want to put the cannabis tax revenue into the general fund. So that's a big thing that advocates like myself are worried about. HB 160 also wants to get rid of the Tier 3 program. They want to reduce people to, consuming only on private property. They want to get rid of, I said, Tier 3. They also want to limit the percentage of THC percentage as well. So there's a lot of things going on. And again, we just try to keep people abreast of what's going on at the state level. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on TikTok, YouTube, obviously. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. I have a Substack. Haven't really posted much on the Substack, but make sure you guys subscribe. And please support. You know what I mean? The more that you guys support me in Ohio Cannabis Report financially, through likes, through watching, through commenting, it'll help me afford to be able to do more. You know what I mean? I'm doing a lot of this, out on my own dime and on my own free time. So if you guys help me, I could do more. So thank you guys for the ones that have been supporting. I know it's a lot. I know, again, we bring race into it, and there's just a lot of different issues when it comes to cannabis. But the biggest thing is we need to destigmatize, and we need to decriminalize cannabis, period. You know what I mean? But also give people opportunities, especially those who have been most harmed by cannabis prohibition. So again, I'm going to share I'm going to share my screen here. So we can share some content, so we can just see latest news going on in the Ohio cannabis industry. So here we are. Okay. So this is MSN, story by Emily Sanderson. First recreational cannabis dispensary opens in city of Middletown. Middletown is joining in on the recreational cannabis sales. Terrasana is opening the city's first ever recreational cannabis dispensary. The new store alongside Dixie Highway promises more than just access to legal cannabis. It also brings local jobs and community partnerships to the area. It will be Terrasana's 5th dispensary in Ohio overall. Local leaders and neighborhood vendors will attend the grand opening at 10 a.m. Wednesday morning, which is today, I believe they're talking about. Grove City Mayor again vetoes Ohio cannabis dispensary despite 4-3 vote from council. Anna Lynn Winfrey of the Columbus Dispatch. This is a paywall article. Grove City Council voted 4-3 on Monday night to approve a special use permit for a cannabis dispensary that came before them for the second time. However, Mayor Richard Ike Stage said later in the meeting that he would again veto the measure. Stage cited opposition from the public in his decision to veto the measure again, including a petition signed by nearly 600 residents and non-residents opposing the planned dispensary. So again, you know, that's on them. Recreational cannabis continues to fuel Ohio sales numbers. Jeremy Noble from Crane's Cleveland Business. This is another paywall. Ohio's legal cannabis industry has generated $656.4 million in cannabis sales in the 8 months since this state adult use program launched early August. Cincinnati suburb to welcome first cannabis dispensary. Cincinnati suburb is ready to welcome its first marijuana dispensary as an Ohio-based medical and recreational cannabis retail company sets its sights on its fifth location. Oh, that's Terrasana, Cincinnati. Okay, Middletown is Cincinnati. Sorry, guys, I don't know everywhere in Ohio. So Middletown is, I guess, Cincinnati. What is 420? Who started it? Day of cannabis enthusiasts fall on Easter this year. Sunday is said to be a big day of both Christians and cannabis users. April 20th, known colloquially as 420 or a holiday for cannabis enthusiasts, falls on a Sunday this year, the same day as Easter Sunday, when those who practice Christianity celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's been over a decade since the two occasions have coincided, but what does 420 mean and how did it become associated with cannabis? Here's what to know. What does 420 mean? According to the USA Today, April 20th or 420 is a holiday celebrated by many cannabis smokers, both in the United States and around the globe. In the states where cannabis is legalized, smokers can celebrate their love of the plant through public and private events, including festivals, special film screenings, pipe making classes, and more. Property taxes, Brown Stadium, cannabis money. What do you know? What to know about Ohio's House budget? This is Haley B. Miller and Jesse Balmer, Columbus Dispatch. Probably going to be a paywall soon. The Ohio House passed a 2-year budget proposal that includes funding for a new Cleveland Browns stadium and changes to school funding. Other provisions include increasing funding for public libraries, restrictions on transgender rights, and changes to cannabis revenue allocation. The budget also addresses other issues such as election oversight, Medicaid coverage, and in-person work for state employees. Ohio would change how it pays for schools and help the Cleveland Browns build a new stadium under a budget plan approved Wednesday by the Ohio House. The House voted 60-39 to pass its 2-year budget proposal, which outlines how the state would spend money on services and to what extent taxpayers cover the cost. The House budget isn't the final version. The Senate will make changes, then lawmakers will hash out differences among each other and Governor Mike DeWine. DeWine must sign a balanced budget by June 30th. This is a budget that increases funding for public schools, increases funding for higher education, increases funding for libraries, largest tax relief for property tax in Ohio's history, Rep. Brian Stewart, Republican of Asheville, said. Now, Brian Stewart is also the one that brought HB 160. So what he's saying, you know what I mean? You got to be he's a Republican. He's also the one trying to take the tax revenue from the cannabis industry and put it into the general fund, by the way, for full disclosure. Here's what you need to know about the House's plan. Ohio House votes to provide $600 million in bonds for new Cleveland Browns Stadium. Ohio would provide $600 million in bonds to help the Browns build a domed stadium in Brook Park, including interest. This would cost the state about $1 billion over 30 years to repay. A last-minute change increased the Browns' initial deposit by $11.5 million. House Republicans say the Browns plan will transform the local economy and will make Ohio a top destination for football fans. But Cleveland leaders and some state officials, including Attorney General Dave Yost, contend the move is illegal, too expensive, and may not benefit the state as promised. On Wednesday, Rep. Ron Ferguson, Republican of Wintersville, offered an amendment to prevent Ohio from offering loans for professional sports stadiums, but it failed by one vote. DeWine floated a higher sports gambling tax to pay for the stadium's projects, but the House scrapped his proposal. School funding and property taxes. The House budget spends $231 million for public schools for the next 2 years, but it's bans the funding formula that Republicans and Democrats approved in 2021. Critics say the plan doesn't keep up with inflation and amounts to a cut for school districts that expected millions more from the state. It also would require counties to reduce homeowners' property taxes if a school's district's reserves exceeds 30% of its previous budget. Spend $35 million to create savings accounts for students who attend non-chartered private schools which don't accept vouchers because of truly held religious beliefs, according to the Department of Education and Workforce. Increase the tax credit for homeschool expenses from $250 per family to $250 per student. Rep. Bride Rose Sweeney, Democrat from Westlake, said the money belongs to the citizens. We shouldn't make such drastic decisions that could really implode the way that we are funding our schools and could very seriously lead to even further property taxes, she said. Changes to Medicaid program. The House plan would cut Medicaid expansion coverage and the federal government's funding drops below, if the government's funding drops below 90%. It also limits Medicaid coverage for doula services to 6 counties with the highest infant mortality rates. The budget prohibits the Department of Medicaid from spending money on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, with the exception of services for people with disabilities. New plan to pay for public libraries. House lawmakers increased funding for public libraries after outcry over the cuts they initially proposed, but legislators are still spending $90.8 million less than what DeWine pitched. Lawmakers also changed how libraries are funded. Rather than getting a set percentage of state revenue, the legislature would decide how much to spend every 2 years. The budget will also require libraries to place materials related to sexual orientation or gender identity in adult sections. What about marijuana revenue? DeWine wants to increase taxes on recreational cannabis and divert the funding to jail construction, law enforcement training, suicide prevention, and more. The House kept the tax rate at 10%, but changed how money would be spent. Municipalities with dispensaries would get 20% of revenue for 5 years, and the rest would go into the state's general bank account. Lawmakers also want to give the Division of Cannabis Control $10 million annually to partner with the statewide nonprofit on substance use prevention and education. Current law directs revenue to governments in perpetuity, in addition to funding for addiction services and non-defunct social equity program. House plans to take aim at transgender rights. What else is in the House budget? Eliminate DeWine's increase in cigarette tax to fund $1,000 tax credit Ohioans with young children, abolish Ohio's election commission, and shift the authority to the Secretary of State's office. County boards make county coroners an appointed position instead of elected, increase pay for local elected officials, require adults to provide photo identification and to view porn and other material that is obscene or harmful to juveniles online, make it a crime to create deep fake porn, which uses technology to make explicit images, require state employees to work in an office starting January 1st, provide a $750 income deduction for donations to pregnancy resource centers, which aim to deter people from having an abortion, ask the federal government for permission to exclude sugary drinks from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, aka SNAP, allow online fireworks sales. Woo, that's a lot. Let us know what you guys think about all of that. Obviously, that is a lot to digest. And yeah, 91.3 WISO, our community, our nation, our world. Article by Douglas J. Guth. Smoke smart. Smoke smart. Ohio consumers and dispensaries can cultivate a quality cannabis experience. More than 100 new cannabis dispensaries are slated to open in Ohio in 2025, according to the state's Division of Cannabis Control. This adds to the 124 storefronts already in place, ideally attracting an influx of new and veteran consumers. Newbies in particular will be asking about what constitutes quality cannabis, a question that proprietors like Cut Clutch Cannabis are prepared to answer. We fight the general idea that THC potency is everything, like that's the end all be all of determining whether a product is high quality or not, said Pete Neisett, Chief Compliance and Communications Director for Clutch, an Akron cultivator with dispensary locations in Lorain and Canton, and forthcoming storefronts in downtown Cleveland and Northfield Village. A lot of consumers, especially in the beginning, will say, I want the most potent thing you have. What they'll get is the highest THC content, but that doesn't tell the whole story. THC, the psychoactive component of cannabis, produces a high when consumed through smoking, vaping, or edibles. Yet THC concentration is only one attribute of overall product quality. Terpenes, another chemical compound found in cannabis, contribute to how the plant tastes or smells, said Neisett. We're still exploring this, but we know there are hundreds of compounds in the cannabis plant that exist in different quantities. Neisett said even the things that exist in just nominal quantities may lend themselves to the kind of subjective experience when using the product. Understanding the plant's value, Clutch has welcomed hundreds of new customers since Ohio's recreational debut last August. Conversations at dispensaries among patrons and staff revolve around flavor, aroma, and the quality of a product's active ingredients. Ultimately, these discussions are designed to empower consumers. The baseline question is what's your experience with cannabis? And I should say, are you an experienced user? What product forms do you use? Do you only eat edibles? Do you use flower products exclusively? And if you do that, do you smoke them or do you vape them? What kind of devices are you using? Additional queries may touch on strain preferences, flavor profile, and desired outcomes. Tim Johnson, a longtime lobbyist and former law enforcement officer who advised the Ohio legislature on the state's 2023 cannabis legalization initiative, said misconceptions arise from consumers who simply don't understand the plant. To that end, Johnson has presented language to the Ohio Legislative Service Commission, a nonpartisan arm of the state General Assembly, that would require detailed labeling of all cannabis products. Under this guidance, product packaging would include active and inactive ingredients, cannabinoid terpenes, and flavonoids, along with various additives, sugars, or dyes. In the interim, Johnson continues to battle the sensationalism that first manifested during the cannabis hysteria of the 1930s. We have to recognize we've all been misguided about the problems of cannabis as far as it's a violent drug that creates violent tendencies, said Johnson, that it creates a heart and lung problem, that type of stuff. There's a lot of misconceptions there. Consumers can get reliable information from bud tenders, retail associates who work for the dispensary floor, and studying reputable online resources. New users can also identify specific metrics to assess cannabis quality, Johnson said. For instance, you can tell much about high-grade cannabis simply by its appearance, Johnson said. Top shelf buds are deep green in color with red, orange, purple, or blue hairs. Cannabis flower with a light green color may suggest premature harvesting, while dark green or brown may indicate the product's past its peak. I look for a sweet, clean smell that dominates a fresh plant, said Johnson. The plant has a good texture. It's got some good stickiness to it when you squeeze it in between your fingers instead of crumbling like dust. And you want something with a smooth inhalation draw, not something with a draw where you're coughing your brains out. Also, that's a problem with Ohio's cannabis industry. You can't see, touch, or smell the product before you purchase it. And so that's a huge issue, right? Like if you can't see the product, you can't smell it, You don't know the harvest date. That's a lot of, if you're a true connoisseur, you know what I mean. So it's tough to really support the industry when you can't see, smell, or touch the product before you purchase it, which is obviously a big problem, or just really seeing it. So that's something that Ohio industry has to work on as well. The wealth of information. For edibles like gummies, buyers should ask if THC was infused or sprayed on top of the product, as the method of infuse can impact potency, Johnson said. Customers can also talk to bud tenders about dosing. Although the general rule for smoking is to start low and go slow, you have to consider how long a person has been consuming and how long they've been consuming daily, he said. A dose of 5 milligrams is reasonable, then let that take effect and see what happens. Excuse me. If you achieve the reaction that you need, the principle also applies to gummies, which are available in a wide range of potencies. However, edibles, including gummies, exhibit a delayed onset, 45 minutes to 2 hours, compared to a rapid effect on vapes and concentrates, 10 to 15 minutes. All right, give me 1 second, y'all. I'll be right back. So edibles are like the best entry point for Canna curious for recent returning users, he added. For these users, we're looking for products that are at a lower potency with a predictable dose. While we do make high dose edibles, we make multiple lines of lower dose edibles like microdose mints with 2.5 milligrams of THC. I'd feel comfortable giving those to anyone who's curious of legal use. You'll get a little taste of what the drug will do for you. Educational resources are readily available for people new to Ohio's expanding recreational market, Johnson said. Ohioans can earn a Ganjier trade certification from Green Flower, a California-based sommelier certification for bud tenders, buyers, or dispensary teams. Ultimately, the program aims to cultivate individuals with comprehensive, in-depth knowledge of their cannabis product line. Would-be cannabis employees can also attend workshops at the Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit, which has brought vendors, speakers, and industry leaders to the International Exposition Center every October for the last 5 years. Within the cannabis industry, professional bud tenders undergo continuing education, completing 16 credit hours every 2 years under the supervision of a designated dispensary employee. Put simply, a wealth of information awaits both novice and experienced cannabis enthusiasts. Get on the internet and look for the researchers that are out there. He said, experts are the one thing the cannabis community doesn't have a shortage of. We're not here to have somebody rush into the hospital because they had too many gummies and feel like they had a bad experience. So that was a pretty solid article. Obviously, we do not promote or market any of the legal cannabis companies. So we're not funded by anybody. So we're just reading articles. I'm just reading articles from the internet. Let's see. Ohio lawmakers look to subvert new cannabis law. State politicians are offering new proposals to change the Ohio recreational cannabis law enacted by voters in 2023. Their plans would alter many parts of the law approved by 57% of voters in November, and range from lower potency levels to reducing the legal number of homegrown plants, dictating where marijuana can be legally consumed and whether it can be shared between adults. Lawmakers' efforts to redirect newly collected tax dollars from cannabis sales are drawing the most attention. The ballot language of Issue 2 specified that Ohio would establish a 10% excise tax on recreational cannabis sales and then divvy up those revenues this way. 36% to go to Cannabis Social Equity and Jobs Fund, 36% to go to a host community cannabis fund, 25% to go to Substance Abuse and Addiction Fund, and 3% to the Division of Cannabis Control and Tax Commissioner Fund. In October 2024, issue of Cincinnati Magazine for Insight, Ohio voters passed Issue 2 as a legislative statute, providing elected officials the collective power to change it. 3 proposals currently are on the table. Governor Mike DeWine's biannual budget proposal for 2026 and 2027 proposes doubling the recreational cannabis excise tax to 20% and relocating all taxes to projects that include a program for Ohioans to expunge past cannabis possession charges, operating funds for the 988 suicide and crisis hotline, lifeline, law enforcement training, and jail and law enforcement facility construction projects. Senate Bill 56 is a 152-page bill passed in the Ohio Senate in late February that would overhaul the current cannabis law. The bill cuts household grow limits from 12 to 6 plants and bans smoking cannabis outdoors. Initially, the bill proposed raising the excise tax to 15% and rerouting the dollars, but all tax-related changes were removed before it passed. Finally, the Ohio House of Representatives last month began to consider House Bill 160, a 120-page bill that would revise a variety of state liquor control, hemp, and adult use cannabis laws, and has been received as a less dramatic departure from the law approved by voters. The excise tax is kept at 10%, but alters pathways for tax revenue, eliminating the Social Equity and Jobs Fund and reducing the Host Community Fund to 20% for just a 5-year period beginning in 2026. Remaining tax revenue will be allocated to the general fund. Critics, including the Cleveland Plain Dealers editorial board, say changing the law undermines Ohioans' rights in the state's constitution to propose by petition amendments to Ohio's law undercuts local governments. Lawmakers should leave the local government earmark in place, the newspaper's editorial board wrote. Doing otherwise would demonstrate contempt for Ohio voters. The host community fund will distribute revenue on a quarterly basis among Ohio municipalities and townships in an amount proportional to the cannabis tax revenue collected in each community. The law passed by voters gave host communities permission to spend tax dollars how they see fit. As of March, the state had collected more than $36 million in cannabis excise taxes, yet none had been distributed as lawmakers are still deciding where it will go. For many years now, the Drug Enforcement and Policy Center at The Ohio State University's Morris College of Law has been studying marijuana legalization across the country with the trained eye on Ohio's process. The center estimates Ohio could collectively and conservatively collect around $62 million from cannabis taxes in the first year, resulting in roughly $22 million allocated to the host community fund. To understand that impact, OSU researchers from the center recently contacted the majority of Ohio's host communities to ask about their plans for any expected cannabis tax revenue. Officials in Norwood told researchers the city planned to use the money for infrastructure projects. Our streets and bridges are in dire need of repair, replacement, Norwood's response reads. Many years of underfunding and lack of resources to take on large critical infrastructure projects with minimal preventive maintenance means communities bear the burden of trying to take on huge projects with limited funds. The city of Monroe said it was one of the first to embrace medical and adult use cannabis businesses in Ohio because of the opportunity for new revenue. Monroe City Council took the step with the vision that it would likely create a new revenue stream to help deliver services to our residents without imposing any additional burden on them, reads the city's response. Harrison was planning to add the tax revenue to its general fund for future infrastructure projects, as well as aid our police and fire departments. Losing it would have a major impact on our fire funds, as well as limit the number of infrastructure projects, leaders wrote. Milford said the changes could result in a loss of approximately $100,000 annually, potentially impacting both the school resource officer program and economic development initiatives. Host communities from across the state spoke of significant impacts. The OSU report concluded, with many also indicated that they are operating at or near a deficit while dealing with additional mandates from the Ohio General Assembly, such as the increase from 19% to 24% and required local contributions to the Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund. What's next? SB 56 has already been passed by the Senate and in March was introduced to the House and assigned to its Judiciary Committee. The same committee is also considering HB 160 and will hold public hearings, then decide whether to be in favor of, defeat, or amend each bill or create a substitute bill. The House Rule and Reference Committee reviews what the committee comes up with and decides to either re-refer it to another committee, take no action, effectively killing the bill, or schedule it for a third consideration by the full House, resulting in a floor debate and a vote. If the House passes HB 160, it's taken up by the Senate, which follows the same process and decides whether to pass an amended version, which would need to go back and forth until the two houses agree. It can also decide to do nothing and effectively kill the bill. If the House ultimately passes SB 56, or if the Senate passes House Bill 160, or if they pass an amended compromise bill, it then goes to DeWine to be signed into law or vetoed. As for the governor's biannual budget, it's been introduced as House Bill 96, and it is currently under review by the House Finance Committee. The lengthy budgeting process also involves public hearings and both houses working on their own versions of the budget until they can agree and present a budget proposal to the governor by July 1st. Woo! That's a lot of reading. That is a lot of reading. Thank you, everybody who has been here, came to watch. Be sure to subscribe to the Ohio Cannabis Report channel. Be sure to comment on any of the stories that you guys seen. What do you like about any of these bills? What do you dislike about the bills? What do you like about Ohio's cannabis industry? What don't you like about the industry? Let us know about the legacy market. What's going on. There's a lot happening in Ohio. There's a lot happening around the world. But we want to hear from you. I want to hear from you and know what's going on in your corner of Ohio. Again, I'm in Columbus metropolitan area, so I see what's going on here locally. The moratoriums in the suburban communities. So the majority of the suburban communities in Columbus area have moratoriums against cannabis. So again, would love to hear what you guys have to say. I know there's a lot happening. But again, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for showing love and support. Make sure you guys follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I'm your host and founder of Ohio Cannabis Report, Gerald Moore Jr. You can follow me personally on Instagram as well. Thank you guys for the love and support. Till next time, peace.